Hello everyone, my name is Laura and I am here today at noon and I'm really happy to be here. Noon is a whole new thing for me. Feel like I'm right on RW prime time and this is fun. It is, it's a little bit of a nervous thing for me as well right now, because I am not going to be doing any art. I have my art right here with me, and this is where I have been doing my art studio work on Monday evenings and Wednesday afternoons, but today I am just going to be speaking, so this is going to be a different thing. But I'm speaking to you on something that I just feel really like it is important to talk about. And it's going to be a little bit about self-isolation. That is a term that we've all gotten very familiar with these days. And I'm going to be talking about another kind of isolation that is known as more as psychological, psycho-spiritual isolation. And then I'm also going to talk about how we can reframe that and talk about solitude and changing this time of self-isolation into maybe a more positive way of thinking of it as embracing solitude. So, thank you for having me, and normally this would be time for a devotional with Reverend Lee, but she has taken some time off. So here I am, and I will do my best with this time, and no worries, she will be back. So, thank you, Reverend Lee and Reverend Karen, for giving me this opportunity. And I'm just going to read most of what I have, just so I make sure that I can keep on track with it and say everything I want to say. So bear with me as I just read to you what I have to say. So as I said, I've chosen to talk about this time we're facing right now as we all deal with COVID-19 and staying at home. And as we follow the requests of our federal and provincial governments. Specifically, I would like to speak about isolation, as I was saying earlier, and what that means in terms of our mental and spiritual health. I'm going to be speaking to you about it from what I've learned through my studies when I was studying for my psychotherapy masters, yes, and what I've studied and wrote about in this thesis. But not only that, but also from a tender place, my lived experience. Many years ago, 26 to be exact, I experienced my own mental health issues, diagnosed as postpartum depression. So I'm going to speak to you a little bit about that. A little bit of holy honesty, I guess those of you from RW might say. So, yeah, I'm going to talk about that and also talk about my experience of working through my studies and my experience of reframing isolation and loneliness and finding my way through to solitude. So I'll just start with talking about isolation and the basic two kinds of isolation. The first one is obvious. It's physical isolation. So we've all been experiencing that to some extent, particularly those of us who live alone. So that is physically what isolation is. But there is also spiritual isolation, and that is something that can be further exasperated by this physical isolation that we've had to be facing. And so it's been quite some time already. We're into our 8th week of this social isolating period during this pandemic. 8 weeks. So staying at home and physically isolating, that's a long time already, and many are stressed and are feeling like they've had more than enough of this. But I want to be a voice of encouragement and say to everyone, well done. We've come a long way in this already. And if we can do this for 8 weeks, then we can keep going. So let's give ourselves a pat on the back for a good effort. But I know for many this has been difficult. Self-isolating has been particularly hard on those of us who are living alone, who may have already been experiencing some loneliness due to chronic illnesses of various kinds, elderly people who can't get out too easily, and even as it was before the pandemic, and it's just gotten more complicated. And then others of us who just happen to be single and living alone and feeling lonely. It just means things are getting tough. Being mandated to be physically isolated is probably the most difficult for many who are alone because of, and so they're alone because they live alone, but also feeling loneliness because of mental health issues. Because mental health issues can make us feel isolated psychologically. So social distancing may have had the most impact on those of us who have struggled with mental health issues. It's further exasperated these feelings, kind of like almost adding salt to the wound. And I've been concerned about this from the start of this isolation time because I know the danger of it for mental health. As I said, I know it from my studies and I know it personally. I have lived it. Isolation is defined as set apart or cut off from others. The origin of the word is from the Latin word insulatus, which means made into an island. Anthony Boysen, a founding spiritual counseling educator, theorized the inability to socialize and thus assimilate new experience is apparently common to those who struggle with mental health issues, who feel themselves isolated from those whose love is necessary to them. So they feel isolated and misunderstood. And again, I understand this from my own lived experience. Anthony Boysen wrote this from his own experience and also through his research. This is often how people find their way into the helping professions, because of feeling called to help others whose struggles they know. In an article by Brian Kramer in 2016, he writes that loneliness resulting from isolation can in fact be really damaging to our mental health. It's a public issue, and it can be as harmful as smoking or excessive drinking and drug and alcohol addictions. In 2016, he wrote that we're living through an epidemic. There are more people experiencing acute isolation than ever before. It's ironic that we've never felt so lonely, and yet we've never been so connected with technology. It would be too casual to suggest that technology is making us feel isolated, but it's becoming increasingly possible that it is a contributing factor and can exacerbate existing feelings of loneliness or mental health issues. Yet the COVID-19 has made technology and digital communication essential, and it has been a huge source of comfort for those who have the technology to reach out and to others and feel less alone. That said, it still remains that physical isolation has been difficult. So I'd like to suggest that instead of looking at this as a time of isolation, that we attempt to reframe this and call it solitude, a time of retreat. That sounds so much better than isolation. Isolation makes me think of where they have solitary confinement in prisons. A retreat in solitude sounds so much better. So what is solitude? Think of it as a time to retreat, a time where we can recharge our batteries by being by ourselves, so that we will be able to be our best selves when we head back out into the world and interact with people. A time to learn how to be at peace by yourself and make a choice to do so when you recognize that you need it as a beneficial skill to have. Solitude is a choice. I'm just going to take a pause here. Solitude is a choice. So that way it's different from self-isolation, which has not been our own choice. It's been necessary. And yet it has been, as we are choosing to follow the guidelines and therefore contribute to flattening the curve, lessening the spread of the virus, and working together to end the pandemic. This is a choice. But it's taking faith to make this choice to stay safe, just as Noah was staying safe on the ark. For some people, solitude is a default setting. They're comfortable by being by themselves. These are people we understand to be introverts. And when solitude is a choice and a comfortable one, then isolation really has no part of it. As a subjective choice, solitude can be healthy. So as a community, we can promote solitude as a time that can be joyful. And we can be encouraged to use it as a time to spend in contemplation and reflection on our thoughts and feelings. What was really interesting to me, as I've been thinking about all of this, I came across this journal that I had when I was studying in college, studying for my degree, and as I was working on my practicum at St. Stephen's and at Robertson Wesley. And at the front of this journal, I have this little sketch of this flower, and it says at the bottom, embracing solitude. So, thanks, Tanya. Drinking water in style, I love it. Okay, thank you. So I'm just going to read you this little bit of thoughts I had in reflection of solitude that I found comforting when I found it recently. So I wrote it in 2016, and here I am reflecting on it now, and I just found it so encouraging in this time of isolation, in this pandemic, to find these little notes about embracing solitude. So I wanted to share them with you. How do I genuinely embrace solitude? To feel fine being alone, even glad, cheery, and not lonely. To feel genuinely that I am not alone, comfortable just being me, doing things I like to do and enjoying them. What is loneliness? How can it be overcome? The truth is, I came into this world alone, and I will leave it alone. I need you, your help, your divine light in this darkness of loneliness that is smothering me. Lift me up, God, and be with me. Give me the gentle nudge I need to get myself going, to just enjoy the simple things, like making a nice meal just for me. Doing things to get productive and get the things done, like this thesis that I want to do for me. You know me. You know my life. You know my heart. Only you can be here with me now and always. I put my trust in you. So those are just a little bit of my thoughts that I wrote in that time on solitude. And so I hope that gives you some comfort today as it gave me. And as you might see on Sunday, it kind of goes along with the scripture from Psalm 35, I believe it is, about just knowing you're not alone. So I'm also going to just finish up. Oh, no, sorry, I have a few other things to say before I finish up. Things we do while we are alone can make all the difference of whether it is isolation or solitude. Imagine you are on a retreat by choice, and each day you wake up, you choose to curl up with a good book, have a cup of tea, pet your dog if you have one, go out, have a walk, enjoy nature, enjoy your plants, water them, practice yoga, or make other choices that contribute to your wellness. Solitude can be about taking a break and reconnecting with your own needs as human beings, cutting out the rest of the noise every now and then, In these times, we can become our most creative selves when we limit distractions and find solitude as a way of taking back control and getting to know ourselves. From a spiritual perspective, solitude is where we can encounter the sacred. And as we experience and embrace this in solitude, we do not need to feel isolated or lonely. Hi, Shiloh. Thank you for noticing, but my intention is distinguishing isolation that seems harsh and sad from solitude, which is more open. And seems like we are all doing, I'll check and see, I can't see the rest of what you've written now, but I will check into it later. Thank you. So I'm just going to end this time of our discussion just with something I found that I also found comforting by Henry Nouwen, and it's from the book called The Inner Voice of Love. And this book was given to me by Reverend Karen a few years ago when I was studying theology, and I found it to be a very great source of comfort as well as a great resource for my theological studies. So I'm just going to read you the last devotional in this book that he has written, and it's called Keep Choosing God. So keep choosing God. You are constantly facing choices. The question is whether you choose for God or for your own doubting self. You know what the right choice is, but your emotions, passions, and feelings keep suggesting you choose the self-rejecting way. The root choice is to trust at all times that God is with you and will give you what you most need. Your self-rejecting emotions might say, "It isn't going to work. I'm still suffering the same anguish I did 6 months ago. I will probably fall back into the old depressive patterns of acting and reacting. I haven't really changed," and so on and so on. It is hard not to listen to these voices. Still, you know that these are not God's voice. God says to you, "I love you, I am with you. I want to see you come closer to me and experience the joy and peace of my presence. I want to give you a new heart and a new spirit. I want you to speak with my mouth and see my eyes, hear my ears, touch with my hands. All that is mine is yours. Just trust me and let me be your God." This is the voice to listen to. And that listening requires a real choice. Not just once in a while, but every moment, each day, and each night. It is you who decides what you think, say, and do. You can think yourself into a depression. You can talk yourself into low self-esteem. You can act in a self-rejecting way, but you always have a choice to think, speak, and act in the name of God, and so move toward the light, the truth, and the life. As we go through this time, we are faced once again with a choice. You can choose to remember this time as a failed attempt to be completely whole, or we can choose also to remember it as a precious time when God began new things. God began new things in you that need to be brought to completion. Your future depends on how you decide to remember your past. Choose for the truth of what you know. Do not let your still anxious emotions distract you. As you keep choosing God, your emotions will gradually give up their rebellion and be converted to the truth. You may be facing a real spiritual battle, but do not be afraid. You are not alone. Those who have guided you during this period are not leaving you. Their prayers and support will be with you wherever you go. Keep them close to your heart so that they can guide you as you make your choices. Remember, you are held safe. You are loved. You are protected. You are in communion with God and with those whom God has sent you. What is of God will last. It belongs to the eternal life. Choose it, and it is yours. I found these words very comforting as I was writing my thesis, and I'm finding them comforting again right now as I'm living alone through this time of self-isolation and distancing. When things are getting tough, I draw comfort on these words, and I hope today that you have as well. Thank you so much for listening, and enjoy the rest of your day, and let's just keep on going. We can do this. Bye.